Yeah,
We're going to talk
nice.
about the methodology. We're going to switch and talk about a different methodology now for measuring goals that I kept alluding to all morning. So we're still on this step, we're talking here about identifying a person-driven outcome. And this is the approach we're going to talk about. This approach is called goal attainment scaling. So going back to this question that you get right after you set a goal in the app, so after you've set the goal, this question asks, do you want to measure this goal using a patient-reported outcome measure? And you could hit yes, and those were the goals we just worked through, or you could hit no. And that's what we're going to talk through this time. So goal attainment scaling, we did not come up with it. This is an approach that's been used around for, has anyone ever heard of it?
From you?
Yeah, I
Okay,
don't
for me,
know.
but okay. Been used in, I think it started actually in behavioral health and mental health, and it's been used most recently. We see a lot published in rehabilitation medicine. So physical therapy and occupational therapy use it. It's an approach, it's basically operationalizing personalized goals. So we're going to talk about making a personal goal into something that you can measure. Same thing, it works on these principles of making a goal specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time limited. And this approach will actually force your goals into this framework because you have to have them this way in order to work through this approach. So the way that this is going to work is you're going to work with people to set the goal. You're then going to determine, same step of determining if this is a goal to improve something or to maintain something. We're going to scale the goal, and I'll walk through what that looks like, but basically you scale the goal from -2 to +2 on a 5-point scale. And then you create a plan, same as the problem plan and barriers. So this is what it looks like. What you're going to try to do with this is you take a goal and you describe what meeting that goal in the next 3 months would look like. And you start by what is the current state. So if your goal is to improve something, the current state goes in this -1 box. That's where you put where you are right now. And where you want to get is this expected level of goal achievement. If your goal is to maintain something, then you put your current state right here because that's where you want to get to. So you're going to start by saying what's the current state and where do you want to be? Where do you want to be in 3 months? What do you want to achieve? And we've talked a little bit about the fact that that could be an outcome. I want to be able to get to the pool to go swimming 3 times a week. Or it could be a process. I'm going to visit 3 nursing homes to try to determine what's the best next place for me to live. But you're not going to stop at just where you are now and what you want to achieve. You're actually going to then say, okay, that's good, but what would it look like to be even better than that? And that would go in this somewhat better than expected. And then if you were really shoot for the moon, pie in the sky, best possible, what would that look like? And then you finish up by saying, okay, well, we talked about where you are now. What would be even worse than where you are now? What would be much less than expected? And what you've done is then you've laid out a goal of outcomes of a goal. So when you come back for follow-up, you could actually look at this. So I'm going to, your goal about running the relay. Your goal is I'm going to run a relay. You're in 2 relays. So that would maybe be something where you actually exceeded on your goal. And that's what we're trying to get at here, is that sometimes you meet your goal, sometimes you exceed it, and sometimes you stay where you are or you're worse than where you are. So it's adding more level of granularity and specificity to rather than just medical yes, no. So here's, this is what I went through here. The confusing thing about this sometimes is if you're in an improvement goal, where you put the current state versus a maintenance goal. The app will tell you this, so you don't need to worry so much about this because the app is going to say when you select improvement, it's going to say current state here. If you say maintenance, it's going to say current state there. But the thing to keep in mind, especially as it's good to just kind of understand it, is that you're always trying to aim to get to this box in the middle or above that box in the middle. So here's an example. This goal was to be strong and healthy enough to fly to California to visit family, daughter, and her fiance and son's family by winter of 2016. So where she was now, she was concerned she was not going to be able to drive for 3 months, not be able to fly to California in December. Where she wanted to get to was to resume driving in 6 weeks and to fly to California to visit family in December. So this was someone coming out of a skilled nursing facility, transitioning back to the community. What would be even somewhat better than that, it would be driving in 4 weeks, so being able to achieve the outcome faster. And even better than that would be achieving the outcome faster and fly to California in October. And then what would be worse than where she is now is not being able to resume driving at all and not be able to fly to California. So this is an example of how you've taken one goal, but you've scaled out different outcomes for it to try to make it very specific and measurable to understand what it is you're trying to achieve.
There are 2 goals there.
There are, yeah. So this is something we're going to talk a little bit about. Sometimes people have a hard time really getting down to just one thing. It's really about multiple things. And so we'll talk a little bit about this. If I was to do this absolutely perfectly, I would say I'd make these 2 separate goals, because what if you achieve one but not the other? Right. So that would be a very valid critique of this.
Flies to California, but she cannot drive.
There you go. So that would be definitely a way to make this a better goal. This is an example of a maintenance goal. So that was an improvement goal where someone wanted to improve on something. This is somebody who wants to avoid accidents such as falls. She just wants to avoid it. Right now, where she is that she hasn't been having many fall scares, so she wants to just continue to have no fall scares in the next month. So if she had no fall scares in the next month, she would be meeting this goal, because she would be maintaining exactly where she is. But somewhat better than expected would be to have no fall scares in the next month and complete physical therapy exercises 5 of 7 days a week. And even better than that would be no fall scares and complete physical therapy exercises every day. And then you can go down. So when you're maintaining, you've got more space for what could be worse. This would be to have 1 fall scare in the next month, and much less would be to have more than 1 fall scare in the next month.
Our patients tend to just fall rather than be scared about the fall.
You could make this about actually falling as opposed to fall scares, yes.
Oh, less than 12 times in the next 3 months.
There you go.
That would be good.
But falls is one that actually does tend to work here, because sometimes you can, falls works well with this because you don't have really good problems about falls, really. And so if you're trying to quantify something and say it's about getting from 12 to 10, that this is helpful, and it's kind of more helpful than something that just says, did you reduce, did you stop falling? Well, you're not going to maybe stop falling altogether, but you're going to definitely reduce it. So we have in your toolkit actually a whole bunch of examples of how different goals have been scaled. This takes a little bit of practice. It's not necessarily intuitive. What we've found is that on average it takes about 10 people to get really comfortable doing this. But you can see a whole bunch of examples in your toolkit starting on page 22. Some ways that people do this is sometimes they scale out numbers. So they'll scale out time. So if you want to go to the upper extremes, you might achieve a goal faster. That's one way to do it. You can also scale out with numbers by achieving more of a goal. So I went to the gym twice a week. I went to the gym 3 times a week. I went to the gym 4 times a week. I got my daughter to brush her teeth 3 nights a week, 4 nights a week, 5 nights a week.
I think one we saw often was losing weight. So I will lose 5 pounds, I will lose 7 pounds, I will lose 10 pounds.
One of the things we recommend is to put a range of values in the boxes. So if you put, and I have an example here, let's see if I'll make this backwards. Okay, so this is an example. This person put complete physical therapy 5 of 7 days in a week. That was in this box, and then this box was complete physical therapy every day. What happens if you do it 6 days? You fall in the middle. So that's where it's better to put 5 to 6 here, and 7 here, or 6 to 7 here. so that there's no gap in between them if you're doing numbers.
Makes sense.
You recognize the other thing that often happens is you put multiple goals in the box. So that first one was a good example of we have multiple goals, and this person, they got to California but they couldn't do driving. How are they going to rate their progress on this? So this is a good goal that might have been better to separate out into two separate things. That is also an example of if you're separating it out, because we're only looking at one goal at a time. It's a good opportunity to say, let's talk about what the priority for you is right now. Is it getting to California or is it driving? Because they may associate the two have to happen together, but it doesn't necessarily. So sometimes that's a good way to kind of refocus on priority. Process versus outcome goals. So sometimes I have a hard time thinking about these, but the best example I have is in here. So the goal is I want to learn to play the piano. The outcome is I can play 3 songs, 5 songs, 6 songs. The process is I go to lessons 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week. You can scale that either way. So it could be the exact same goal of I want to learn to play the piano, but what you scale out could be processes to achieve that goal, or it could be the actual outcome. And this gets to that point we made earlier about sometimes people are more comfortable with setting a process or scaling out processes than they are about scaling out outcomes. I know for me, if I put I want to learn to play the piano, definitely put me back and I'm going to go to lessons, but that doesn't mean I'm going to know how I'm going to play anything. The thing that's important if you're going to do process versus outcome goals is to try to keep it the same in the boxes. So not to mix up process and outcome. So if I wouldn't want to put in my boxes, go back to this an example so I can show you the boxes. But I wouldn't want to put, my expected is go to my lesson 3 times a week. And better than expected would be to play a piano song, because what if I go to my can play a piano song, but I only went to lessons 2 times a week. Yeah. So those are just some of the common things that we often see, to try to help you keep focus of some of the common things that we see. So this is what it's going to look like in the actual app, and I'll walk you through an example where it's going to show you what the goal was. This will get imported from whatever your goal is that you set. You hit the improvement or maintenance. So this is an improvement goal. So this is actually the older version of the app. Now it would say the improvement. There. It says where are you now? Current state. So it's telling you where to put that current state. Where are you now? If you hit maintenance, the where are you now would be in this box. And you're going to type into these boxes. So this is somebody who, this was about sleeping better through the night. Where are they now? They wake up 3 or 4 times a night. They want to get to a place where they only wake up once a night. Somewhat better would be not wake up at all during the night. And this much better is not wake up at all during the night and get a full 8 hours of sleep. And worse than where they are now is to wake up 3 or 4 times a night and not fall asleep until after midnight. Now, you can probably, and we can do this, if there's always going to be ways in which you could improve on these goals. So these are all things that came out of the pilot. So, you'll get better at this with time, and you'll get better at this with also following up with people and figuring out, where did they fall and how do we make this easier to actually assess progress. Same with the prom that we did with the prom. After you do that, you talk about, what are the barriers to achieving that? Okay, these are the same questions, difficulty, confidence, and then your rating of difficulty. This is the patient-facing report that then is generated that will show people what their goal was, if this was an improvement or maintenance goal. This is actually a follow-up one, so this is saying today you indicated since your last follow-up you've done somewhat better than expected. And this is just showing you what the different things are in the boxes. So some frequently asked questions that we get about this. Can I skip the most extreme boxes? Those are generally the hardest for people to work through sometimes. You've already thought about what would be better than expected, and you're like, I have to go much better than expected. That's like not even, like, can we just skip those and just keep them middle food? We'd like you to try to fill every box. Sometimes it is helpful for people to really see what is that super ambitious goal like, and to be able to see that. And it's also helpful for people to see what would be worse than where you are now, because that can be a helpful discussion about the fact that you're not necessarily at the worst possible place. But if you get to a point where you're working and you just can't do it, it's fine. None of these boxes are you have to fill it out to move to the next screen. So it's really about, we want you to try, but do what's right for your relationship with that patient. Do I need to answer those confidence and difficulty questions? Same thing, we would like you to try. They're really important for us to understand about the difficulty of the goal, especially because we talked about people will set different levels of difficulty. And if we want to compare, when we did this in the pilot, we found that some sites had more difficult goals than other sites. And that was a really important factor that we may need to take into account in our quality measures of adjusting for the level of difficulty of the goal of the site. Does it need to be all in the patient's words? Do those boxes need to be all in the patient's words? Not necessarily. We want you to definitely be sharing with the patient what's being written down, but you can suggest things. What if the patient has dementia? This is a good opportunity to work with the caregiver on this. So in the same way we did it before, it could be a goal that the caregiver has for the patient. It could be a goal that they have for themselves. It could be a goal about, trying to get supports or services in to help with the patient. I will say that before we did this pilot, this was being done at UCLA with just patients with dementia and their caregivers. What if this just doesn't work? What if people just are like, no, this is not working for me? That's okay. If this doesn't work, we just report that this didn't work and we move on. We want you to try it with everybody, but we don't want you to be kind of going through just an exercise of data documentation to say that you got it. It's really valuable for us to know where this is and isn't working. And same thing, what if the patient refuses and says, I don't want to do any of this? That's absolutely fine. There's a place to document patient refuses and you just move on. Okay. Questions about goal attainment scaling? All right, so we're gonna, same thing, I've just selected a different patient this time, so we're starting from scratch. This, you just hit start, we're gonna go through the same process. I'll be a patient this time in their house, and I'm gonna go to the goal inventory. This is a patient. This time the patient, they come in and they're like, what I really wanna do is I wanna get to bingo on Sunday. I don't know, maybe that's the Lord's Day and they don't do bingo on Sunday. But
My grandma used to do bingo on Sundays, it's definitely
Okay.
a Sunday thing, yeah.
Get to bingo on Sunday, that's this person's, that's what's really.
Time for bingo, there's time for the Lord.
One in the morning.
Time for both on the same day.
One in
Yeah.
the evening, yeah.
All right, so I didn't even go through the goal inventory or select any other goals. This person, they knew what they wanted to do. So we hit continue. This is what they want to do. So this go to bingo on Sunday, they came in, they had a really specific goal. So we're not gonna, this isn't right for a prom. So if I ask them a bunch of questions about their social function or something about that, and they're gonna say, I just wanna go to bingo on Sunday. So we're gonna do goal attainment scaling here. Okay, so this, we're gonna say this is an improvement goal because this person has not been getting to bingo on Sunday. So where are they now? Not going to bingo. Actually, I'm gonna make it, they're going to bingo only once a month. Okay, so this person says, what is really important to me is they wanna get to bingo every Sunday. All 52 Sundays in the year, they wanna get to bingo. So for this person, you could do one thing. So you could put, go to bingo every day of the month there, or you could say, why don't we say what would be good enough? maybe for this person, we're gonna say, go to bingo 3 out of 4 Sundays a month.
But then if they go 2, you won't know if.
Very good. So maybe this is go to bingo 2 to 3. See, you've already caught on. You're catching this on.
Paying attention.
Times a month. Okay? So, somewhat better than expected, that's where we're going to put this go to bingo every day, every Sunday of the month. Now, are you going to say, what if they're going 4 and there's 5 Sundays of the month and they're only going?
I wasn't.
I was thinking like what would be better than going.
But I'm glad you're not
Okay.
worried that I'm gonna say.
I'm thinking,
Okay.
Is it a leap year? Like, what?
So then you're in this spot of, okay, what am I going to put in this really tough? Like, what's better than going to bingo every month? You can't get better.
Start your own bingo league. Do it every day.
Right, okay, so it could be go to bingo every Sunday, plus go on Wednesdays. It could be go to bingo every Sunday, plus go to
Win? Mini golf.
mini golf or I don't know,
I think we had one where it was like go to a recreational activity, was it like go every Sunday? And then the much better was go to the recreational activity and talk to one new person.
There we go.
At the activity. I know that was a
Win
bingo.
Win.
Yeah, win.
Do it every day. Play bingo all day.
Win all the bingos.
Gamble all money
Yeah.
away.
So, sometimes, I know we hadn't talked about putting 2 goals in here,
Right.
but here what you're saying is that there is potentially achieving this goal plus something else. And that's okay to put in these upper extreme boxes because you're saying you're still got the same thing. If you just talk to a new person and you don't do bingo, then they've said, bingo is what's most important to me and I only went once a month, but I did talk to a new person. So that's okay. And then much less than expected is, no bingo.
No bingo.
I'll just say that. Alright, so let's see, what is this person's barriers? Well, transportation.
Cause, maybe to play bingo.
Cost, of bingo. I don't know how expensive bingo is these days.
Oh, it runs up there.
Yeah.
Shortness of breath.
Shortness of breath, there we go, we got a good one.
I'm just trying to think of things I can actually help people with.
Yeah, there you go. Shortness of breath.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. We're gonna really load it on this person.
Yeah.
Hard of hearing.
Hard of hearing.
Oh, that's
Can't
a hard,
hear the
that's a good
bingo.
one for bingo.
That's great. You're not the bingo.
An unsteady gait.
Oh. This is
Or
really
incontinence.
Oh,
also.
incontinence. Yeah.
Alright.
This person's not going
All of our patients have all of those
Alright,
problems.
so we've got a whole bunch of problems getting the person to bingo. So you can't set another goal because you're going to spend all your time just trying to address all of these different problems.
Yeah.
So that's when your plan could come in. I'm not going to have you guys write out what's the plan to address all of these different
MTA mobility.
Attainability.
I have
Depends.
seen actually bingo vans in
I
Baltimore
bet there are
Bingo van.
some.
for like the big
That just
bingo
seems
places.
Weird.
They will
Like
come
they're
out to your
playing
house and collect you for
portal.
bingo.
Wow.
Now I'm sure that has cost associated with it, but
Right.
they
They have
will.
those for casinos in Massachusetts. Down to
Well,
Penn.
they definitely
Yeah.
collect you from
I
the
believe
from the
Definitely
casino.
will be happy to bring you to the casino. Where
They
you
will.
can-
We're gonna need to
Now.
we're gonna need to start a
Post on my
gambling like
fridge,
hotline
Yeah.
for our patients if we encourage them.
All right. So the plan is. I'm just address all of the button. This
Solve all problems.
yes.
Benzos, Benzo.
Okay, so this person, they think that they've got a huge amount of confidence that they're saying this isn't going to be very difficult, and I'm very confident.
Wow.
And you, as the clinician,
And we're
you're
like, no,
this is going to be hard to get you to go to bingo 3 to 4, 2 to 3 times. Because keep in mind the goal is that we're working towards is this 2 to 3 times a month. That's going to be hard to move you from the 1 to 2 to 3 times a month. Hit submit. Complete and sync. Now when I go back in, so when I come back you can see this was their goal and this is how it's all split out, so everything from your past encounter is gonna be right out there.
In this case where you added that second goal, if the patient did not go to bingo every Sunday, but
They
met
did talk to someone
a,
new.
met a person because they went like one time, so does that fall
Yeah.
under that somewhat better than expected, because it was, it's like a
So we'll
goal.
talk a little bit about that when we get to the follow-up.
Okay.
Sometimes patients will say, I didn't meet the things in that boxes, but I'm doing so much better than expected. And that's fine. That's what we have patients rate them on. That's why we're gonna have the patients rate and you rate as well on where they fell. So that could be different. And sometimes people will say, I didn't go to bingo every Sunday of the month, but I went to Bible study every Sunday and that was good enough for me. So that's what they put in there.
Yes, but you failed your own test, so I'm sorry. No.
It's really what we're gauging here is mostly from, the patient. It's sometimes the exact specifics don't always work out because you've taken time, and it's a different place, but it's about the kind of, you're coming back and you're saying how close are you to achieving this goal. Even if the specific thing didn't happen, you're doing something every week that's achieving that same overarching outcome, which is to get engaged in some type of social activity. Yeah, let me show you.
Okay.
So we talked about what achievement of a goal looked like for the prom, right? It was if they wanted to improve, it's any score improvement. If they want to maintain, it's just no decline.
But even if their prom score improved, they might say like, oh, I'm not done, I still wanna work on the goal, so then is
Yeah.
it achieved or not?
So what we're
According to
looking for in our metrics is at least one achievement in a 6-month period. So if you set a goal with someone and their prom doesn't change by 3 months, they may change and it's gonna change in the next 3 months, or you're gonna be able to get to a better goal that's gonna change in the next 3 months. So we're saying it could be you have 3 goals set in that 6-month period and you achieved one of them. It could be that it was one goal and you didn't achieve it by 3 months, but you did achieve it by 6 months.
So how are we measuring that it's achieved? Cause,
So that's really good. So for the metrics, so what we can measure,
yeah, how are you measuring?
how are we measuring it?
Yeah,
If it's a prom and it was an improvement
and the score,
and the score went up by at least 1 point.
okay.
If it's a maintain, the score did not decline at all.
Mhm.
That's how we're measuring, that's basically success for that prom.
Okay.
For the goal attainment scaling, it's any score of 0 or above, which is that middle box.
Got it, okay.
Any goal that you had where you got to that expected state or above. Now, I want to kind of say that I mentioned this earlier, achievement may not be the magic sauce here. It may not be as important to achieve a goal as it is to revise the goal and come to a better goal. And so we're looking at the metric of achievement, but we're also looking at the metric of follow-up and continued monitoring of a goal. And we'll look to see how both things are related to the outcomes that we're interested in.
People were so motivated by not achieving their goals that they stayed out of the hospital.
I would say that when it comes to activation and experience and shared decision making, what we heard qualitatively from patients was they didn't achieve their goals, but they said, wow, I really loved this. I felt like my provider was really asking me questions about what mattered to me.
So it's like an A for effort, like throughout the process.
Yeah.
The thought of doing it or trying to get
Yeah.
to something is motivating within itself, just the
Yeah.
idea of having a goal.
Or having people care about
Yeah.
what's
Yeah.
important to
Care.
you.
Yeah.
That was what we heard a lot, is that this was, we heard people say, this is the first time anyone's ever asked me what I wanted. So those are the types of things that we think is the magic piece of this, is that it's showing you're caring about somebody, about what they really care about. That's that what matters in those 4 M's.
And I think also with some of the stuff we heard was it really still is that collaborative relationship between you and that individual. So I remember one person said, well, she gave a little and I gave a little and it worked out for everything. So that's what I think especially everyone liked about it was collaborative. It's a way to have a conversation and a discussion, and it, like Erin said, it's really not like checking off the boxes in the app. It's more about the engagement and the care visit.
So, let's just talk a little bit about that follow-up, because I think I started here on what is follow-up. So we're gonna do next, we're gonna have you role play the follow-up piece. And so how would you come back then? So you've set a goal, you've got this goal attainment scaling all scaled out. Here, we're gonna start a little bit differently than the prom. So the prom will start with the prom, and then we get to narrative progress later. You can do this in whatever order you like, but the app is gonna guide you first to just narrative progress. So just asking people, this was your goal, how's it going, what do you think? Then we're gonna ask the individual to actually assess what box do they fall into. And it's gonna show you what was in those boxes and say, why didn't you rate your progress using the scale we had before? And then we want you to rate it. And like I said, sometimes people will say, well, I didn't really quite get this, but I still think I fall in this box. And that's fine. Same thing, then you determine, do you want to stay with this goal? Maybe they didn't quite achieve it and they want to keep going. Maybe they achieved it, but they're like, you know what? I just want to stay here. So it's basically become a maintenance goal now. Or they want to try something new. They're like, wow, that was great, I did it, let's do another one. That you can all do it. And then finally also you can revise the plan.
What is the importance behind, if we're doing the prom, doing the scale before? Because we're going to be naturally inclined to say, how's it going with the goal? And before saying, well, let's take the scale real quick before we talk about it.
You can talk about the goal.
Okay.
There's nothing that stops you from it. The app gears you straight to the prom, because the biggest problem we have is that people talk about the goal and then they say, I don't have time for these questions, and they don't do the prom.
Okay, gotcha.
That happened all the time in the pilot is that they skipped the follow-up prom, and if you don't have the next prom, you can't see the change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And where I think naturally sometimes you're geared towards wanting all that qualitative feedback and not going for the numbers, and so that's why we make you do the prom. You can talk about it. That's why the goal shows up there.
Okay.
So you can see that goal and you can say, this was our goal, how's it going? What's going on with it?
Okay.
You just will have to put in some of that, try to put that in after you do the scoring. Okay. So here's an example of, this is blurry, so it'll show up better when I show you through, but this is how, when they rate their progress, it's gonna ask them to rate it based off of whatever was in those boxes. So they're not gonna say, is your progress somewhat better than expected or much better than expected? It's gonna show them actually what was in those boxes. Okay, so we talked about it. So what is achievement of a goal? Any score of 0, which is that middle box or above, and it's the same for a maintenance or improvement goal. So if it's maintenance, it's staying in that same middle box or anything above it, and if it's improvement, it's getting to that middle box or anything up above it. And what would be any reason why you might want to think about revising something, either the plan or the goal, is if they've gone below that. So it would be if they've never had a maintenance goal and they've actually declined, or if they had an improvement goal and they haven't made progress. So what do you do if there's a red flag, if somebody's saying they're not making progress on this goal? Have a conversation again about progress and barriers. What are the barriers that might be keeping you from this? This could be that this isn't the right goal for them. They've changed their mind about what they want to do, in which case you want to revise the goal. It could be that you want to switch from using the GAS or goal attainment scaling to PROM. You might say it's a better method. You might want to rescale the goal. You set a goal and what you put in that expected box was just way too much. We need to break that down into smaller steps, and so you can rescale it that way. You can also revise the plan of care. Maybe the inhaler wasn't the magic key to helping them. Maybe it needs something else in addition, and so that's a kind of, sometimes we call it managing to outcomes. You're still trying to figure out what's the right thing to help the person get to the outcome they want. If they meet a goal, that's great. You've got the same options you do with the PROM. You could set a new goal. You could switch from improvement to maintenance. So you can either say, are you ready to set a new goal, or you could switch to maintenance. And sometimes after someone's met a goal, they're like, that's it. I'm met the goal, I'm happy. I don't want to do any more of this, and that's fine too. A little bit about switching between the methods. So I showed you before how you could switch to a different prom. You can also switch from prom to goal attainment scaling and vice versa, and I'll walk you through that. Regardless of whether you switch, everything is all going to be saved from the previous encounters, so we'll talk about that. We've gone over this a little bit already, but the goal attainment scaling works really well for people who have concrete and actionable goals. So if they come in and they've got a more specific thing, like I want to attend my grandson's wedding, goal attainment scaling is perfect for them. You don't need to worry about trying to find a prom. If they've got a clear idea of what success and progress looks like. If they have really more abstract goals, goal attainment scaling can be really hard. Like I just feel anxious all the time. I want to be less anxious. Sometimes it's hard for them to articulate in those boxes what that would look like, and then the prom might work better. Are people who have difficulty articulating hypothetical situations. So they have a really hard time thinking through that. The prom might be easier for them. So this is switching from prom to gas. I actually walked you through this before, but they right here you can keep the same goal, but you can change the method for measuring the goal and just switch to goal attainment scaling. And this would be the question when you go from gas to prom. So if you have a goal attainment scaling, do they want to revise their goal or scaling? You can say no. You can say, yes, I want to revise the goal or the scaling. I want to switch from improvement to maintenance, or I want to switch to using a prom. So just a little bit in terms of what we found in our pilot. We did this with 184 patients who had a baseline encounter. These were almost all 50 and older with an activity of daily living limitation. About 16% of the encounters were done with a caregiver, and the average difficulty of the goals was right in the middle, about 1.5. But like I said, we did see some sites that had average difficulty that was more than other sites, so sometimes it does tend to cluster with sites. We lost about 19% to follow-up. Either the person died, couldn't be contacted, left, or refused. So of the 149 patients we had with follow-up, here's where they fell, and this is the -2 to +2. And so for those people that are number geeks, this is a really nice distribution. You like to see this. This is what it should look like. So it was really good to see this with about 74% getting to the 0 or above. So 74% meeting their goals, which is good. We don't want to see 100% meeting their goals because that means that they're too easy. And 12% of people changed goals.